I turned 63 last spring, and I thought the hardest part of my life was already behind me. 32 years as a high school history teacher. A divorce I didn't see coming. Raising my son mostly on my own after his mother left for someone younger, someone with fewer gray hairs and more ambition. I thought I'd earned some quiet. I was wrong. My son's name is Alden. He's 34 now. Broad-shouldered, good-looking in a way that always made me proud and a little nervous at the same time. Charming. He could talk his way into or out of anything. Always could, even as a boy. When he was 12, he convinced his teacher that our dog had eaten his history project. We didn't own a dog. She believed him anyway. He married Gwendoline. Gwen, everyone called her, about 6 years ago. She was pretty in a cold sort of way, the kind of woman who smiles with her mouth but not her eyes. I tried to like her. I genuinely tried. She had opinions about everything. My furniture, the neighborhood I lived in, the fact that I still drove a 12-year-old truck. She never said anything directly. It was always questions. You're still driving that old thing? Oh, you kept that couch from before? Little things. But they add up. They had a daughter together, Marigold. She was 4 years old at the time all of this happened, and she had her father's brown eyes and her great-grandmother's red hair and the most serious little face you've ever seen on a child that age. She would walk up to you and study your face like she was trying to read something written there. I loved her so much, it sometimes felt like a weight in my chest. The trouble was, I didn't get to see her much. Gwen had a way of making visits complicated. Plans changed. They were busy. Marigold had a cold. Something always came up. I told myself it was just how young families were, overscheduled, overwhelmed. I made excuses for them the way you do when you don't want to see what's right in front of you. Then Alden called me in early October to say they were going to Scottsdale for 10 days. Work conference for Gwen, he said, and they were turning it into a vacation. Just the two of them. A second honeymoon, he called it. What about Marigold? I asked. There was a pause. She'll be fine. We've got it handled. I assumed that meant my ex-wife's sister, who lived about 40 minutes away and had watched Marigold once or twice before. Or maybe a neighbor. I didn't push. I probably should have pushed. What I did do, because Alden had asked me about 2 months earlier, was arrange for someone to come clean the house while they were gone. He'd been meaning to get the gutters cleared and the inside of the house deep cleaned before winter. He wanted it done while Gwen wasn't home, because she was particular about strangers touching her things, and he figured 10 days was enough time to get it all done without her hovering. He'd given me a spare key for emergencies years ago and never asked for it back. I found a local cleaning company through a neighbor's recommendation, a small operation, family-owned, run by a woman named Rosalind, who'd been in the business for over 20 years. Professional, thorough, came with solid references. I hired her crew for a Wednesday, 2 weeks into Alden and Gwen's trip. Rosalind herself showed up that morning, along with one younger woman who worked with her. I wasn't there. I had a dentist appointment and then lunch with an old colleague. I'd given Rosalind the key the day before and walked her through the layout over the phone. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, basement, attached garage. Standard stuff. I was sitting in the diner with my old colleague, halfway through a plate of eggs, when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. I'm glad I did. Is this Edmund? The voice said. It was a woman, and she was trying very hard to sound calm and failing. Yes. Who's this? This is Rosalind, the cleaner. I'm at your son's house right now, and I need you to come here. I need you to come right now. The way she said it made the hair on my arm stand up. Not the words exactly, but the sound underneath them. Like she was holding something in. What happened? Is someone hurt? Please just come, she said. Please. I left cash on the table and drove there in 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock the whole way, trying to keep myself from going faster than I should. Rosalind was standing on the front porch when I pulled up. Her younger colleague was sitting on the porch steps with her arms wrapped around herself, staring at the ground. Neither of them spoke when I got out of the truck. Rosalind just held the front door open and looked at me. Upstairs, she said. The small bedroom at the end of the hall, the one that's been turned into a storage room. I took the stairs, 2 at a time. The room at the end of the hall had always been a guest room when Alden and Gwen first moved in. Sometime in the past year or two, it had become a dumping ground. Boxes, old furniture, bags of things they never unpacked. The door was closed. I opened it. It took my eyes a moment to adjust. The blinds were down and the overhead light was off. The room smelled close and stale, like recycled air. There were boxes stacked along the walls, a broken lamp in the corner, garbage bags full of clothes. And in the far corner, behind a stack of moving boxes, there was a child-sized mattress on the floor. A pink blanket. A stuffed rabbit with one ear. Marigold was sitting on the mattress, her knees pulled up to her chest, watching me. She didn't cry. She didn't call out. She just looked at me with those serious brown eyes, and I understood then what Rosalind had sounded like on the phone. That thing she was holding in. It was horror. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. I crossed the room and crouched down in front of her. "Hey, it's Grandpa. I'm here." She blinked. Then she held out her arms. I picked her up and she was lighter than I remembered. I could feel her ribs through her shirt. She pressed her face against my neck and didn't say anything, and I stood there in that dim storage room holding my granddaughter and trying not to fall apart. Rosalind had found her when she opened the door to clean. Marigold hadn't made a sound. She'd just been sitting there in the corner, quiet, the way a child gets when they've learned that making noise doesn't bring anyone. I carried her downstairs. Rosalind had already put a glass of water and some crackers on the kitchen table. She'd raided the pantry, bless her, and Marigold ate like she hadn't seen food in a while. Slowly at first, then faster. She drank 2 full glasses of water. I asked her gently how long she'd been up there. She thought about it. "A lot of sleeps," she said. I asked if her parents had been home. She shook her head. I asked if anyone had been coming to take care of her. She said a lady came the first 2 days. Then the lady stopped coming. She didn't know why. I sat there at my son's kitchen table and listened to my 4-year-old granddaughter explain, in her small, clear voice, how she'd figured out how to open the pantry to get crackers and cereal, how she'd been drinking water from the bathroom sink upstairs, how she'd gotten scared of the dark and pulled the blanket over her head to sleep. She'd been in that house alone for somewhere between 4 and 6 days. I called 911. Then I called my attorney, a man I'd known for 30 years, and I told him what I was looking at. He told me to document everything and not to let Marigold out of my sight. The paramedics came and checked her over. Dehydrated, they said. Underweight for her age. Otherwise physically okay. One of the paramedics, a young woman, kept her composure until she was outside, and then I saw her through the window, press her fist against her mouth for a long moment before she went back to her truck. Child Protective Services arrived about an hour later. A detective came too. I walked them through what Rosalind had found. Rosalind gave her statement. The younger woman, who'd been outside on the steps the whole time, gave hers too. I showed them the room, the mattress, the near-empty pantry. I called Alden's cell phone from the kitchen, with the detective standing right there. He picked up on the 3rd ring. I could hear pool sounds in the background. Water, voices, the kind of echo you get in a hotel courtyard. "Hey, Dad," he said. Easy. Relaxed. "Come home," I said. "Right now." "What? We've got a few more days. The conference isn't even... Marigold has been alone in your house for almost a week. Come home right now, or don't bother coming home at all." Silence. A long silence. And then something shifted in his voice, some door closing behind his eyes, and he said, "That's not what happened." "I'm standing in your kitchen," I said. "I'm looking at your daughter. I just watched her eat crackers like she was afraid I was going to take them away. Don't you tell me what happened?" I hung up. The detective asked me a few quiet questions. I answered them. I was very calm. I've always gone calm when things are bad. It's a thing that served me and cost me in equal measure over the years. On the inside, something was burning. They flew back that night, cutting their trip short. Alden called me twice from the airport. I didn't pick up. Gwen sent me a text that said, "This is a misunderstanding, and you've made it much worse." I saved that text. The story they told CPS, when they finally told one, was that they'd arranged for a friend of Gwen's to check in on Marigold daily. The friend, a woman named Sylvie, who I'd never met, had apparently agreed to this come the first 2 days, then had some kind of emergency of her own and stopped coming without telling anyone. They hadn't noticed because, Alden said, they'd been trusting Sylvie to update them. They had not once, in 4 to 6 days, checked the home camera system they themselves had installed in the living room. They had not called to ask how Marigold was doing. They had not, as far as investigators could determine, reached out to Sylvie to confirm things were going smoothly. Marigold had been 4 years old, alone in a storage room that had been designated as her bedroom for nearly a week, while her parents ate at restaurants and sat by a pool in Arizona. What I did not know until the investigation began in earnest was that the storage room had always been Marigold's room, not a guest room turned storage space. Her room. It had been her room for over a year, while Alden and Gwen used the actual third bedroom as a home office for Gwen's freelance work. My granddaughter had been sleeping in a room with no proper lighting, no decorations, no toys, except what she could reach, a mattress on the floor, and a window that didn't open all the way, for 12 months. I thought about all the times I'd visited, all the times I'd sat in the living room with Marigold on my lap and a cup of coffee in my hand, and never thought to ask to see her bedroom. Never walked down that hall. Never opened that door. I've made a lot of peace with a lot of things in my life. That particular thing took me longer. My attorney filed for emergency temporary custody within 48 hours. The judge granted it the same week. Marigold came to stay with me in the house where her father had grown up, in the room where Alden used to sleep, in a real bed, with curtains I let her pick out at the store. She chose yellow. Bright, sunflower yellow. She didn't sleep through the night for almost 3 weeks. She'd wake up in the dark and go very quiet and still. The way she'd gone quiet and still. The way she'd gone quiet and still in that storage room, and I'd sit on the edge of her bed and talk to her until she went back under. We talked about a lot of things in those nighttime hours. Butterflies. The dog she'd seen in the neighborhood. What she wanted for breakfast. I let her talk about whatever she wanted. I didn't push her toward anything harder. A child psychologist started seeing her twice a week. The psychologist told me, in the careful professional language they use, that Marigold showed signs of prolonged emotional neglect, and that early and consistent intervention was important. What she was describing in plain English was a little girl who had learned to be invisible because invisible was safer than visible, who had learned that meeting things led to disappointment, who had stopped crying in the dark because no one came. Alden and Gwen hired an attorney, a sharp one. The argument they ran was that it had been a genuine miscommunication, that they were otherwise attentive and loving parents, that a week was not representative of their parenting as a whole. Their attorney submitted character references, neighbors, colleagues of Gwen's, a woman from their church. I sat through all of it. I am a patient man. What we had on our side was Rosalind's testimony, the paramedic reports, the CPS investigation, which had found, in addition to everything else, that Marigold had never been taken to a pediatric dentist, that her 4-year wellness visit had been missed by 5 months, that there was no evidence of any consistent childcare arrangement in the home, despite both Alden and Gwen working demanding jobs. We had the home camera footage, which Alden and Gwen had forgotten about entirely. It showed, with timestamps, exactly when Marigold had last been seen in the living room in the company of an adult. It showed exactly when the checking-in friend had last appeared and then stopped appearing. It showed Marigold, small and alone, wandering into the kitchen on day 3 to look in the refrigerator and then wandering back out again. We also had text messages between Alden and Gwen, retrieved legally in the course of the investigation. On day 4 of their trip, Alden had texted Gwen, "We should probably check in with Sylvie." Gwen had responded, "She's fine, stop worrying." That was the extent of it. No follow-up, No call. I did not let myself feel what I felt about those texts until much later. There's a time for everything. The judge terminated their parental rights 17 months after that Wednesday morning, when Rosalind called me from the front porch with that held-in horror in her voice. It was not quick, and it was not easy, and there were hearings and evaluations and more paperwork than I'd have thought possible, but it happened. I became Marigold's legal guardian. There is a path toward adoption, if I choose it, and I think I will. Alden pleaded no contest to child endangerment charges. He was sentenced to 18 months, served 11. He has supervised visitation rights now, on paper, but he hasn't exercised them. Gwen took a plea arrangement, community service and probation, and moved out of state within 4 months of the verdict. I don't know where she is. I don't particularly want to. I am 63 years old, and I am raising a 5-year-old. People at the grocery store sometimes think I'm her grandfather taking her for the afternoon. I am, technically, her grandfather. I correct them anyway. She started kindergarten in September. She has a backpack covered in flowers and a lunchbox shaped like a frog. On the first day I walked her to the classroom door, and she turned around and waved at me with her whole arm. The way kids do when they haven't yet learned to be self-conscious. And I waved back and waited until she was through the door before I walked back to the truck and sat in the parking lot for a while. She sleeps through the night now, mostly. The yellow curtains help. She has opinions about everything. What to have for breakfast, which stories I read wrong, the correct way to arrange stuffed animals on a bed. Strong opinions. I welcome every single one of them. I think about the storage room sometimes. The pink blanket. The one-eared rabbit. The way she held out her arms when she saw me. I think about how close it came to going differently. If I hadn't arranged for Rosalind to clean the house. If Rosalind hadn't been the kind of woman who calls instead of just walking away. If my son had asked someone else, or I'd hired a different crew, or any one of 100 small things had been different. I used to teach my students that history turns on accidents. On the wrong person being in the right place, or the right person being in the wrong one. I believed it academically. Now I know it in a way that has nothing to do with academics. There are people who will read this and want to know if I hate my son. I've thought about that. I don't think hatred is quite the right word. I think there is something in me that still grieves who he was as a boy. The kid who made up stories about imaginary dogs with enough conviction to fool a teacher, who once cried for 20 minutes because he found a bird with a broken wing in the backyard. I don't know what happened between that child and the man who texted, "She's fine, stop worrying," from a poolside in Arizona while his daughter drank from a bathroom sink. I'm not sure I want to know. Maybe knowing wouldn't change anything. What I know is this. Marigold is in the next room right now, arguing with the television about something, in the loud and confident way she's been arguing about things for the past several months. It's a new thing, the loudness, the confidence. I am choosing to interpret it as a sign. Last week, she asked me if I'd always be there when she woke up. I told her yes. She thought about it for a second. That serious face, those studying eyes. And then she nodded like she'd decided to believe me, and went back to what she was doing. I intend to spend whatever years I have left, making sure she never has cause to doubt that answer. I've been turning this over in my mind for a long time now. Not obsessively. I'm past that stage. But the way you turn a stone over in your hand when you're walking, and you pick it up without thinking. Just looking at it. Trying to understand the weight of it. What happened to Marigold didn't happen because of one bad decision. That's what I've come to understand. It happened because of 100 small choices that Alden and Gwen made over a long stretch of time, each one a little worse than the last, each one making the next one easier to justify. That's how people end up capable of texting, "She's fine, stop worrying," from poolside while their 4-year-old drinks from a bathroom sink. Not because they woke up one morning and decided to be monsters, but because they've been choosing convenience over responsibility and comfort over inconvenience for so long that they'd lost the ability to feel how wrong it was. I think about that when I hear people say that someone like Alden just snapped or fell in with the wrong person. I don't believe in that version. I've watched enough people over 63 years to know that character doesn't snap. It erodes, slowly, quietly, in ways that are easy to miss if you're not paying attention. And sometimes even if you are. The hard part, the part I carry more than anything else, is that I wasn't paying enough attention. I saw the signs that something was off in that house. The canceled visits, Wynn's comments that always landed a little sideways. The way Marigold went quiet when certain things were said. I filed it away under "that's just how they are" and moved on. That was a failure of judgment on my part, and I own it. You don't get to call yourself a wise person and then claim you never had the information. Sometimes you have the information, and you just don't want to look at it directly. What I've taken from all of this, not as a lesson in the tidy, wrapped-up sense, but as something I actually live with now, is that paying attention is a moral act, not a passive one. It requires something from you. It costs you the comfort of not knowing, and when you have a child in your life who depends on adults to notice, the cost of not paying attention is something that child pays, not you. Marigold is resilient in a way that humbles me. She chose yellow curtains. She argues with the television. She waves with her whole arm. None of that happened because the adults in her life were good enough. It happened because something in her refused to go quiet permanently, even when she had every reason to. That kind of strength isn't taught. It's built, quietly, in the dark, by a person who is trying to survive. I have enormous respect for that, even in a 5-year-old. Maybe especially in a 5-year-old. What I know is that the life you build for yourself and for the people in your care is made out of the small decisions you make when no one is watching. Not the big moments. Those take care of themselves. It's the ordinary Tuesday when you could check in, but don't. The conversation you could have but find a reason to postpone. The door you could open but walk past. That's where it all actually happens. Rosalind opened the door. I'm grateful every day that she did.